if the internet will work.
Hey, sis.
Hey, sis.
On today's episode of She Blaze, we're throwing it back to Vermont as they legalize marijuana sales. PA Superior Court rules in favor of terps. And COVID has changed the culture, and we'll tell you how.
Ooh, okay. This week is about to be very, very interesting. We got so many states to update folks on. And of course, you know, I'm always interested in knowing what I should and shouldn't be doing for the culture. I said, I know you'll let me know. Okay. But of course, you know, we got to kick things off with the high of the week. And I'm always so excited. Somebody asked me about this on one of my Zooms. I've been flexing this dope branded WeedHead container, and it is made by a Black-owned accessories, customized clothing and accessories company, Pressure Detroit. I got to give a shout out to my big sis, Melissa Lawson in Detroit. She got me this, and she just gave them my logo, my favorite color, which is purple, obviously, and they just kind of went to town. It is a thermal, and it has my little ginger tea up in here. And yes, I don't know how much it costs, but I dropped the IG for you guys to follow them, and you can hit them up in Gmail if you're interested in getting your own customized clothing, accessories, or what have you. Pressure Detroit, thank you.
Well, you know what you gave me for Christmas is?
Okay, yes, because you like cups. That's right. I know you're jealous.
I am very jealous, actually. Okay. I want a WeedHead one and a She Blaze one because I work hard for the money.
Okay.
Well, my high of the week, I am giving you guys stoner glam right now between the glamorous big glasses that are new and it's from China, so I do not know what to tell y'all, and my t-shirt by Hempx. So it's hempx.la, and it is actually a clothing brand that is made with hemp mixed with cotton. And it's really cool because it's all about promoting sustainable energy to its consumers via fashion. And as we know, cotton takes up a lot of water. You know, I am queen of the environment, so I'm always looking for ways to really help the environment. And I love clothes, so what better way to actually help the environment by wearing clothes that don't harm the environment? Now, with this t-shirt, it is a price point at $50, but they have really cool things like hoodies with matching sweatpants, so tracksuits, you can buy them separately, short sleeves, and they have all different types of prints. So mine is the Psych, and it has a black girl with the leaf. You know, I'm like, okay, this is totally, you know, could be my lips a little bit bigger, but I'm definitely all about it. They have this shirt is made with weed. They have just the Hempx logo, fire flame, so a bunch of different colors. I of course got white, and shout out to them, and I will put more information on our Instagram.
Woo woo. Yo, no, I love it. I mean, definitely people are probably always like, what's up with the price point? Hemp is actually right now still in its development stages. We're definitely growing and how much people are cultivating and transitioning it into industrialized products, things like teas and the like. So it can be hard to find, which is why that price point is there. So it's definitely more of a luxury, but I hope, and I can't wait until we, like, as we grow this industry, it gets to the point where you can actually buy hemp tea that's $20-$25, which is the price of tea. So that's the only thing I would point out. But true. I like it. I love that design.
Thank you. Well, if you guys are looking for a discount code, because $50 is kind of pricey if you're trying to get everybody a gift, holla at your girl in her DMs and I'll give you a code.
Yes, because you definitely find those quickly. So let's get into these hot topics, Ice. I know we got a bunch of them because so much has been happening the last week. We gotta run through them.
Yes, and thank you guys for coming back after our break. So we definitely gave you extra hot topics since we missed last week. And on our first hot topic, we are talking about Florida. Believe it or not, Florida is becoming one big medical marijuana mecca for the South. However, with most of these medical marijuana states, they are really creating framework that does not allow the market to thrive. Right now, it is in a legal battle. Florida Health Department and one of its very few vertically integrated companies are in a crazy legal battle. Now, Florigon, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Sorry, well, he's a stripper owner. And so, it's very exotic name. It is a vertical integration, and they are definitely suing the Florida Health Department, basically saying that, they're not doing the amendment properly. They're saying that it does not allow for them to have a market that really benefits them. They also won previously in court on a lower level, but of course, you already know the government claps back at the court's decision. So now it is getting real tricky.
Wow. Yeah, Florida is huge, by the way. It came online in 2016 when it passed medical marijuana on a ballot initiative. And ever since, it's been one of those places that you kind of got to watch with a side eye, maybe an eye cover. Like, it's a little bit like they're almost in major accidents waiting to happen. And I was hoping that they would get out unscathed without a lawsuit, because almost every market has had a lawsuit in some way, shape, or form. But this is just one of those situations, again, where companies, first of all, are vertically integrated. They're in every avenue of the supply chain. They control it from seed to solution, as I would say, all the way out to the customer. And there's just so many different ways that the government can be an impediment to success. But I also think one of the biggest impediments to success for the market is the fact that there's no diversity in the market, the fact that they only have a limited number of vertically integrated licenses in the market. And yet they're still doing really well. You know what I mean? They still are trying to figure out, how to capitalize on what they know is a great market for them. They have a really large over 55 population. Their medical marijuana card is only $50, which is really very affordable compared to other markets. And it's just interesting to see, though, that there isn't as much diversity in the product assortment. So once again, who loses out? The patient ultimately, but the market does as well as the operators. Same thing happened in Minnesota.
Yes. And now they're doing something that is rarely heard of. So the reason why the battle continues is because of the lower court's ruling and the governor deciding to, roll that back. They basically are taking it to the Supreme Court, and they're doing something different. They are making them basically start their argument over from scratch, which is normally not really heard of on a Supreme Court level.
Yeah, I think, it's so interesting. I feel like this is greed, right? So if you go into the details more, and, we've dropped that link, it basically is saying, a lot of times people get into the market, they also want to corner the market. They don't want other players to come in. And if a law is passed where there's a limitation on the law, there are companies that, like Florigon, in my opinion, that really are trying to make sure that that limitation stays in place. But like I just described, and that's why I start with the dynamics of the market, that's actually not a good idea, even for them. Competition breeds more consumer usage, more consumer trial. And at the end of the day, if you are one of the larger players that already is vertically integrated, already established, you do have a little bit of a lead. So flex your business muscle and use that lead to your best advantage, versus what I feel like is a bit of a cowardly way to do it is try to prevent anybody else from getting in. We don't need that level of competition. That is not in the best interest of the patients.
Yes, ma'am. Always spitting the real tea and the real facts. So if you're in the South, you definitely want to follow that, see what they're doing, seeing what the argument is. And then you can always bring it to whatever state you're in, because they may have a medical marijuana program that mirrors Florida. So on to our hot topic number 2. And last season, we did a deep dive on Vermont, and we found out so many good news. Actually, Vermont is one of my top 3 favorite markets to date, because they did not rush and pass a framework and when they did their voting by ballot, they didn't rush. They were like, listen, we're going to decriminalize it. Y'all can grow it at home. Yeah, we got a little crazy laws around that, but y'all figure it out while we figure this out. And they gave time in between that. So honestly, Vermont became one of my faves. Now, Vermont, once they coined, though, due to COVID, they pushed back, really creating legal cannabis sales. And so now they're ready to make some moves. And the Vermont governor actually said that the state's retail cannabis sales bill can become law without his signature. So that was a hot off the press update.
Wow.
And okay. Now, they're ultimately creating a cannabis control board. They're trying to make it so that the rulemaking process starts no later than April 1st, 2021. And they really are trying to goal themselves to have their first businesses open by May 1st, 2022.
Yes. I mean, I got to commend them because they at least, like you said, took a very smart approach. We talk all the time about markets that are rushing in. Some of the things that we're seeing with the adult use market in Illinois is not been very good. I think they could have spent a little bit more energy expanding their medical program. We'll say, tell that to you later. But I guess it's important for me as just an analyst, when I'm looking at markets, I do look at state to state. And of course, Illinois is a lot larger than Vermont. There's probably a perception even of a more illegal activity as it pertains to the cannabis market than Vermont. But they work with, I would say, common sense legalization. It means like it is going to take us some time. We've been saying that when we go and we work with all these municipalities, that's one of the first things we say is like, okay, y'all need to make sure you let folks know that when you legalize, it doesn't mean that boom, right then you could get right into the business. There is a time that we have to put smart people who are cannabis competent in a room together to decide what that framework is going to be. But in the meantime, since we already been doing it illegally, and I mean, it definitely ain't turned the sky orange or nothing. I think we definitely we can manage ourselves in some ways. Just set the precedent of people won't be arrested. You get more comfortable with consumer behavior out a little bit more comfortable in the market. And then therefore, when these retail sales or retail dispensaries actually open, the sales will reflect that people are actually more comfortable in a decriminalized state. Even now, I mean, you could say we got a medical program in New York. You could say there's a little dusty flower, but you could still wind up picking up your very potent oils that have very strong terps and wind up basically potentially getting stopped on the train, on any public transportation, on the street, just because of the smell, right? So there's still that conception around, how cannabis use really draws an unwanted police interaction. And so if you set up the market to have some time not having that, it definitely sets up the sales portion a lot better. Now, I've got to see how they manage some of this because I'm looking at some of the limitations, of course, on what they've done with THC. So there's still little remnants of what I call that fear-based regulation in there. But they weren't like bad limits to some degree, maybe, because most cannabis concentrates on the West Coast are over 70%.
Well, I'm so glad you brought that up because we definitely have to get into some of the things that are surrounded by these laws. Now, they are setting new potency limits, actually. They're saying that their concentrates can't contain more than 60% THC, and the flower can't top more than 30% THC, which is like, who did y'all science? But we ain't gonna get into that. And then a single pack of infused edibles will not be able to exceed 50 milligrams of THC, as well as each single serving limit is 5 milligrams. So what is this happening? But I will say with the taxes portion, their medical marijuana patients are still tax-free. Big freaking deal. However, their adult use cannabis will be taxed at 20%.
That's actually still on the lower end compared to some of the other markets. And it seems to be very interestingly, it's still 6% of it is the normal statewide Vermont tax. So only 14% is really attributed to that cannabis SIN tax. I can't stand that, but you see an example of maybe during the time that they was doing their research, to your point, who were they advising with? Because if you look at most of the legal markets on the West Coast, again, the THC levels, and again, we just spent so much energy focused there, and it's not just there. So just as a reminder, it's not all about the THC, in case anybody's confused about that, but the THC level. It is about the terps. But the THC levels over in concentrates tend to be closer to 75, maybe even sometimes 90%, right? In some of the markets. And so, this 60% limit, I kind of want to understand why. I think rather than limiting, we should educate folks on how to dose themselves with certain potency levels. And then 30% for flower. I actually think for what I've seen on the East Coast in terms of the flower THC concentration, that's going to be fine. It's not like New Jersey where it's 10%, right? And the average flower THC concentration is somewhere between 18 and 24%. So, it just, it makes it our artificial ceiling when we know that that's not really what people are growing. In this case, I think people can grow to that 30%. And, we know this too. I kind of am a little bit old lady in this one, but you don't really need flower more than 30%. Because the truth of the matter is, your terps really need to be what you're looking for. And so that's the one thing I think is missing is these labeling requirements. That's something I've taught for CLE. And I think labeling what the terpene profile is way more important than any of these limitations that they're putting on THC. I'm just saying.
Okay. I know that's right. And I can't wait to see this happen. We're going to keep following because, like I said, it's one of my tops. These aren't terrible laws because, at the end of the day, they're still going to have a caretaking system. They're still going to have the ability to know who you're being able to purchase for if you're a resident. So if you're going on vacation and this is what you want to do, you got to pay to play. It's vacation. So as we talk about terpenes, let's get into the hot topic number 3 because it is good. And I feel like cannabis has been getting some wins. Yes, ma'am. And in Pennsylvania Superior Court, they actually reversed a county judge ruling last year calling into question the legality of police officers searching cars based on the smell of marijuana.
Well, talk about the terps. I got to give yes. PA.
That is a real clap, you guys, not a golf clap.
That's a real clap.
Now, this is important because as we've talked about so many times, all these panels, all this education that we're releasing on the social justice portion of cannabis, most of 90% of the stops are based on smell. They're not based on being able to physically see anything out your eye. And we've known state by state, they've been able to get a no warrant, search your car in order to prove that you have cannabis based on the smell. Now, we learned that these smells are actually smells that you smell all the time throughout your day, on your fruits, on your vegetables and spices and many other things. Now, this is really important because even though they did it, some people won't be affected by the ruling. So if they've been stopped previously, they're going to have to go and appeal it directly to that county in order to prove that they got searched for marijuana based on the smell.
Yeah, no, of course they won't make it super easy, right? They're like, oh no, we're not going to try to help the quote unquote criminals. But this is definitely a win. Philadelphia as an inner city, this is one of the number one just, again, reasons for unwanted police interaction. New York, we just talked about it. We watched last year a young man get beat up essentially by 6-7 police officers because apparently it smelled like he maybe could have possibly been smoking a joint when walking through the park, maybe in the dark, but they didn't find nothing on him. Listen, I think we got to stop the madness. First of all, just be real, hemp has terpenes too. hemp has this smell as well. And this is a lot of also the reason that southern states do not want hemp flower, because they don't want to try to tell the difference between the two. And all they want to do is continue the same behaviors. It'll force police officers in the future to have to actually do their job. It's not just about what you got going on in your car and or on your body, right? In this case, this is car, but this is the type of precedent that moves quickly into body. And if it's done at the state level, we can see it be used in other states. So that's why I'm excited. That's a real clap for that.
Right. Especially if you're a medical marijuana holder, like card holder. A lot of people in Pennsylvania are becoming medical marijuana patients. So essentially, even if they smell it, one, it's still supposed to protect them. And two, you just cannot search my car because I smell like maybe cannabis. It's just inappropriate. You're overstepping the law and you're creating your own law, essentially.
But also, let's be real, like you said, terps are really the cause of the smell, not THC, not CBD, and terps are found in a lot of different places. So you can absolutely be one of those people who you mix in your little oils and scents and whatnot and still smell very cushy.
Hello. And now I've been seeing a lot of new like herb smokable blends. I mean, I've done those before, like long time, but now these things are really catching on, where you're blending your herb with your cannabis herb and getting all the metaphysical effects. And it's like, if you burn that, it's gonna smell like cannabis too, duh.
Yeah. Anything that's smelling like really a burnt with a little bit of oil or scent to it, people just assume it's cannabis, because it's not a cigarette, because cigarette smells terrible. Real talk.
Well, that's a chemical.
Exactly.
And the blunts that y'all wrapping these blunts, these swishers and stuff, these Great Owls, White Owls, whatever. Child, that is a cigarette too. You wrapping your cannabis in a cigarette. You basically merge cannabis and a cigarette together, but that's a whole nother topic. And really, I am excited about seeing how this is going to affect people in the future, but also people in the past. People now have an excuse to really go back to the court and be like, listen, we need to fix this on my record because the cops stopped me based on a smell.
Yeah, well, hopefully people won't have to fix things on their record. I hope you don't mind me jumping into hot topic number 4, because, this week we heard a little bit of things that everybody who was in the cannabis industry, when Senator Kamala Harris said it, was probably like, wait, what'd you say? What did you say? And she said that if they're elected, they're going to decriminalize cannabis. And so hopefully people won't have to just wait for Pennsylvania to be a precedent for other places. Hopefully there's an opportunity for us to be able to do that on a federal level. I know you got more tea, and I cannot wait to get into this extra hot topic number 4.
Yes, and it is extra hot, honey, because ultimately we are in a very exciting experience. Like, what a time to live in 2020. And it is time to pick our next president for the next 4 years, as well as the vice president and many other, government official seats. And so we had the opportunity to see our last presidential debate, vice president and vice president candidate Harris going up against the current vice president Pence, and it was not pretty. Can we talk about just the culture part before we get into the cannabis part? I'm not gonna lie. I want the fly and the side eye, honey. Okay, it was like, did you really just pull out? I'm speaking. I don't know who I want to tell that to, but I want to tell that to some. I'm speaking. Like, I need to tell that to a troll on the internet. I'm so here for that, professional shut the F up.
Yeah. One, she became a meme overnight. The stars of the debate, in my opinion, was the fly sitting on Pence's very, very snow white hair. He looked like he just got doused in powder. He woke up from the crypt. It was and clearly the fly thought so too, because it didn't move for about 15 minutes, despite him answering. He getting the side eye from Kamala. It was quite interesting. And I was here for Black Twitter. Black Twitter named the fly. You know what I'm saying? Like they said, Fly Sean, you Fly Sean he named it. Like literally, we are the salt of the earth. Sometimes I was just, I had to laugh. It made that a little bit more comical, especially since they weren't really answering questions. Real talk, like they, especially not Pence. But one thing I will say is that Senator Kamala Harris on a few things piqued the interest of the cannabis industry because she was, without a question, very clear as to what their goal would be should they be elected. And that was all about decriminalization.
Yes, absolutely. And let's be clear, she has sponsored many cannabis reform bills, safe banking bills. So as much as people want to throw shade, as far as cannabis, she's had our back on federal level. She pledged that this administration will, one, decriminalize marijuana. Hopefully it won't be a super large time gap if that happens. Like, it shouldn't take 20 years to come into effect. Actually, it should take less than a month, 6 months. Like, it should come into effect. She also talked about expunging records of those who have been convicted of marijuana. Again, no details, but they only had 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. She then also pledged that she is going to take steps to track the police and ban private prisons and cash bail. Now, again, if you get marijuana conviction or you get arrested for cannabis, a lot of times you can't afford the bail. And you get sent to this private prison because you can't afford to bail out. You have no assets to put up. People can't put together the money to afford to put up. You also get into a heavy contract with bail bondsmen as well. So good luck with that. And she said, I'm ready to end it and flip that switch off. Whereas Pence, when he started talking, the fly smoked the shit coming out his mouth and was talking about, when you was a district attorney, what you do for Black people? You prosecuted them way more times. Like, so what? At the end of the day, that's who I used to be. You talking about something 10 years ago, when you probably had a little bit more color in your hair, but ultimately I'm now here and I'm seeing more and more and have the voice to speak up. So, I felt like he gave her, he didn't answer the question. He basically just took the time to throw shade. And that's why that fly flew on his head, because nobody likes the shady bitch for no reason.
Oh my goodness. Well, wow. Talk about shade on Pence. I mean, you came for him and he deserves some of it. He was annoying. I'm sorry. I felt like he was definitely running a train over both her as well as the commentator. It is terrible to hear the moderator. Terrible to hear the moderator say, Vice President Pence, excuse me, Vice President Pence. It was just annoying. I can't. But what I will say is in some ways, I understand where you're like, she should say, so what? I've evolved. And she has. People don't give Senator Kamala Harris credit for some of this evolution, and particularly as it pertains to criminal justice. I also just have to always point out, because it's not everybody's experience, that when you are the only in a situation, especially only person of color, only woman, you are judged even more harshly as it pertains to your key performance indicators. And when you're a prosecutor, attorney general, these things are all based on convictions. And what I'll say is it's very hard to be in your day-to-day where you're the only, and then also be expected to step up like your Sojourner Truth or Harriet Tubman. A lot of people who are the first in scenarios, just last week we were talking about the first African-American Louisville, Kentucky prosecutor found mysteriously beat and dead. That was our history and existence. Your first through the door does get the mud. And what I'll say is that she was able to persevere. How did she persevere? You have to be excellent. And to be excellent, that's what she did. She arrested a lot of people, and she definitely had to come with the answers. And I think part of that, her answer is, when I got the power and the voice, and I was no longer just kind of figuring my way up the rank, I was able to say, oh, wait, no, when I got the power, the voice and movement also was behind me. It's just, sometimes I think it's really hard for people to understand what it's like to be the first in a space and what type of risk you're taking, not just to your career, but for Black folks, definitely for your life, especially if you're trying to change something that's systemic, right? Where people do not want to change. But if you look at what she's done in the last 10 years, without her efforts, we wouldn't have body cams. Half of this filming of things that we're now starting to see wouldn't necessarily exist. And we definitely needed to be televised to get progressive white people on board to understand what's happening. Same thing happened in the civil rights movement. Once it started showing people getting hosed down on television in the middle of the nightly news, people started to want to support. So I just think it's important for us to just, as Black folk, hold her accountable. Don't act like it isn't nothing to be putting brothers and sisters in jail. And their time spent in jail for the things too are all around the things that me and you, we support reversing and or providing restitution or restoration around, right? But once she got that opportunity to start doing that, Kamala Harris' record starts to show that she became very vocal, big leader in California as it pertains to changing really instrumental laws, and California's laws set precedent for other places that have also changed the laws. And now she is one of the biggest champions of being able to go back and fix it. And let's be real, the last thing I'll say is when we talk to her about it, yes, would be like, hey sis, why'd you do this? And I mean, hey Sora, why did you do this? And that's important that we have those conversations, but do not get it twisted. Every other former attorney general in there, white male, they were doing the same exact thing because everybody was doing this disproportionate arrest through the 80s and the 90s. We lost 2 generations in some ways of Black and Hispanic men primarily do that. And the indigenous population is even worse.
Right.
So,
well, I definitely understand what you're saying, and you definitely are spitting straight facts and straight to, like, at the end of the day, if she was Harriet Tubman, she wouldn't even made it this far. So we got to be real on what society is today. However, she has done many things for cannabis since she's been able to hold that, like we said, she was one of the people that sponsored the MORE Act. She was a part of the Safe Banking Act. So she has done things for cannabis just specifically. And at the end of the day, California is one of the leaders in leading expungement among marijuana previous convictions. So, we could say anything about their market, but they are trying to actively figure out social justice before other states that have been online for years at this point. What was interesting, and as you would say, the real tea, honey, is that the cannabis stocks was on the rise. And we were seeing that during this discussion of cannabis decriminalization and federal expungement, there were a lot of stocks that were rising. And how often, I feel like we always see this in cannabis.
Girl, don't get me started. So yeah, that's the real tea. She said it. We don't know who's going to win, right? We still got to see what's happening. And that to me is a reasonable response. Was not a reasonable response is that she said it, and the very next day we seeing stocks jump on the Tilrays of the world, double digits and whatnot. Like, really? Why? This
white
is
boy doing white boy shit.
This is the part that I'd be confused about. We've got to get a grip. The cannabis industry cannot be so volatile in the way we respond to things, good or bad. It's one of those things that if the next presidential debate, one of them says that they're not going to do it, are we going to see the reverse? What I would say is, we've been talking about the Ivy investor for some time, a Sora of mine who is definitely constantly talking about the volatility within the cannabis space. Nothing that is being said is going to really tell how this market is going to do. And so right now it just feels so premature that the very next day you're seeing these increases on cannabis stocks. I was blown away by that. But, like you said, this is very common in the cannabis spaces. Maybe it's because it's a new industry. It just responds like, but I do think you're right. There's this element of how people are trying to capitalize greedily capitalize on every little moment to, drive up these quote unquote already inflated valuations and stock prices. So,
well, let's talk about it because, like, from a business analyst perspective, because I want to talk about it from a business analyst, but then I also want to talk about it for, even a little bit of an advocate point perspective. what does it mean for the actual cannabis business, for these individual markets? Because a lot of these cannabis companies that are on, that have stocks and stuff, they're multi-operators. So what does this actually mean for the cannabis business?
Well, first of all, let's clarify. She said decriminalize, not legalize, right? So
Ow.
that's one. And decriminalize does mean that we are actually letting the shackles go on the consumer. So in the long run, that will help these big multi-state operators because consumers will become, again, more comfortable. We talked about that with Vermont. They decriminalize essentially first. And so more comfortable consumers get with just handling cannabis and it not being such a taboo, like the difference between your freedom and being incarcerated, essentially being a smell. The more that happens, the more, I would say, in the long run, markets become more viable, especially adult use. But God only knows how long it will take for there to be an adult use framework on a federal level. And I say that's not a bad thing. Why? Because there needs to be a medical framework on a federal level first. And it needs to be not trifurcated. It needs to be hemp and marijuana together. We need to be capitalizing on the fact that we all know that it's part of the same genus. It's all cannabis. And that is where I feel like the rubber meets the road on truly be able to build it to the multi-billion-dollar, maybe even trillion-dollar industry that it can be in combination. And so, yeah, I get being a little excited. We should watch, but there's still so many steps before we really see it truly impact the market. Decriminalization, the biggest impact to the market is you get consumer behavior starts to shift from a secret thing, right, to more I feel comfortable talking about it with my friends and family, and become more of a outwardly thing. I am okay going to a dispensary and having an experience, buying and shopping.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. And it's been so exciting. Cannabis has had a few wins this week. So we're just riding high through this episode. So I feel like, our main topic should be more about culture and the fun shit, especially because COVID has taken a lot of fun out of things. And it's changed cannabis culture. And so I definitely want to get into that for our main topic.
Let's do it.
So COVID changing cannabis culture, we're going to start off by talking about it from an educational perspective. Now, we know so many, Dasheeda is the queen of conferences. I'd be like, girl, you got to say no. And she's like, no, I can fit this one in. I can do it. And I'm like, it doesn't even go with our brand. But she does it anyway. And so cannabis education is one of the near and dearest things to the WeedHead and company's hearts. And this COVID has changed cannabis education so drastically. We've seen all of the conferences go digital. And that is really interesting because we have had for years cannabis courses online accessible to people for even a reasonable fee. So now everyone else is doing it in the industry because it's the only way to really get education out there. People are also doing paid and unpaid education. They're doing policy summits via online. So you're reaching more people than you ever reached before because you finally decided to digitally integrate it. And you talked about this so much.
Well, I definitely came from the digital space even before I got into cannabis. So I'm comfortable here. We've been Zooming for a while. We've been in the Hollywood Square for a minute. And so that's not, wasn't hard to kind of really jump into it. I'm happy. You are right. I probably am, because before I was jumping on a plane going from coast to coast trying to get to all of these different conferences. And now it's as simple as pressing on my computer and making sure it's charged. I got some lighting and we good. Let's go. So, I think I'm excited because hopefully that will only increase the amount of cannabis competency. Another group that was also very quick to start doing things online before COVID was the Doctor's Knocks, and I appreciate that because they're giving all types of information, and so it's out there if you want to find it. Some things are more expensive. Green, what is it? Green Flower Media is a great educational brand. I shout out to Max. I do like what they've done, and it was one of the first places I've gone, but I do feel like it's a certain demographic that can afford that level of investment. If you still like, I don't know, this still could kind of like, is going on this site going to make the FBI check out my, history? There's people who still concern themselves that paying $2.99 or more for something like that is not always the move, right? That's not what you want to do. You want to pay $2.99 and maybe now I'm going to be on an FBI list. This is how people think. And so because I am always into consumer behaviors, I'm constantly, analyzing those shifts. What we've done is we started to get people more and more comfortable getting their cannabis education via Zoom, via our podcast, these type of digital ways to just listen and not feel so fully like, okay, I'm spending and investing. And the hope is that you get enough information that you make smart decisions, and then eventually you do move into investing, right? Your time and your money, because you do still need it. What you find out in these little, hour podcast episodes, we're dropping tea with a little bit of jewels, but that is literally the tip of the iceberg, and you've got to start digging. That's why I wrote the book, How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry, which still is a top 100 bestseller for Amazon in 2 different categories, girl.
And we doing it. Not to even mention, girl, you did the ebook too. You was like, oh no, we can't just do the paperback. We got to do an ebook.
Yes. And that is exclusively on the WeedHead.com. And that was on purpose because Amazon like to do your price point all the way down and they go your margins. But that's a whole different course. But what I will say is that ebook has certainly risen to the top on our website right now. We don't really sell too many print books from our website, though. If you do buy from our website, you get little cute things, extra things. Most of our print books are being sold through Target.com and Amazon, which is a great thing. They're like, fine, let them do it.
That's so I can do more easier too.
Yes, but the ebook is on our web, and we're capitalizing on the fact that we've been in these Hollywood squares and trying to share information. COVID has made it like, boom, just join in. And now it's no longer like, oh, I got to pay this amount. So just to watch it on demand? Yes. Think of it like LinkedIn learning. Okay.
Hello. A lot of people don't know none. This is why you the business bestie, because a lot of people don't even know the Amazon thing, nor even the LinkedIn learning, honey. Just dropping too much jewels and they got to pay for that. So let's talk about buying cannabis and how it has changed dramatically during COVID. Now, there have been a lot of states that actually removed deliveries, did not have a system, did not have a framework for delivering to consumer. Yeah, you could deliver back and forth to your dispensary to cultivation, but actual delivering to consumer, a lot of these frameworks were written out of it. Curbside delivery, things like that, pickup, drive-thrus. So buying cannabis has literally changed the game due to COVID. And now we have contactless deliveries, which is a drive-through or a pickup, a curbside pickup delivery. And why is it helping? It's eliminating the spread of COVID. That is so important. It's easy to order what you want. Like for you, for me, we go in, we kind of already know what we want, and we just, tiddling the fiddle. And we don't have to be upsold. I feel it's so annoying sometimes going into the dispensary because you already have to tip the bud tender, whatever, and then you trying to upsell me on this 30% THC flower that really even have 30% THC, like 37%? Does THC grow that high? Like, you can't even tell me that. So why are you trying to upsell me on it? Why you keep trying to...
Or it's 37%, and then you like smell inside the jar and you're like, but where the terps at? And you know already that it's going to be not the best experience for you. No, you're absolutely right.
We can't smell nothing.
Exactly. You have to wait. So that's a con, but the pros are absolutely what you called out. How many times have we been in a dispensary on the West Coast where we literally in a very tiny waiting room waiting for our ID to be called and sitting and waiting, and people, different people coming in. So like, COVID has also made it so that we're protecting patients. A lot of people who are like I myself, I'm high risk autoimmune issues. I do not need to be sitting inside a dispensary waiting for my number to be called. And at the same time, I also don't want to be necessarily standing on a long line around corner 6 feet apart from whoever is in front and behind me either. So the delivery piece of it has made it so that we are limiting the amount of risk by the number of people that come in contact. Everybody's gloved, masked, and you're right. It's now opened up new lines of licensing in some cases, or in many cases, it has made the dispensary have that ability to add that extra opportunity within their own business. My hope is that we start to open more licensing on delivery alone, because that's needed. What you talked about before, also just to make sure everybody's using the right terminology, when you are dealing from cultivation to retailer, or you're the back end of the supply chain that is not consumer facing, that's distribution. That's what that's called. That's your distribution portion. When you're direct to consumer, now you're at the retailer to the consumer level, that's delivery. And it's a different thing, even though the distribution people make deliveries, right? You're doing your stops, but that's just in terms of business sense. That's the difference between the two. And delivery, for the most part, has been banned. And again, I think it has to do with our negative connotations as it pertains to the previous market, the legacy market. This is actually what the plug has primarily done, which is be the delivery, right? Not so much the distribution. And that's the great opportunity then for the legacy market to then cross over, because you're not expecting somebody who really they just basically deliver to their network to now have a vertically integrated seed to solution business. That's some of the lopsidedness of how these markets have started. You're essentially trying to you eliminate their ability to get into that market, because that's not what they do even in the legacy market. They're just delivering at that point. And so I see it as a good entry point for legacy to legal transition, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it grows further. There's also a need at this point, even though I think COVID probably is like a con on this, to have a place for social consumption as well with COVID specificity, right?
Oh, wait, slow down. We can't even get into that too much. We got to talk about a little bit more of the cons with the contactless deliveries, which is you can't see and smell the product. We've talked about going into the dispensary, smelling nothing, right? Smelling the jar, smelling the glass, the plastic that is in there. Shit, you might even be able to smell the Boveda, and it don't really even got no smell. So those are the things. You also cannot open it until you're back in your house on private property, because technically you're still in the middle of a transaction if the police ever want to get too funky. And if your order was incorrect, it was like, sorry for you. So there are still cons, just like when you're ordering food, there are still the cons of what happens when you order cannabis. So we don't want to just be like, oh my God, this is so amazing. No, we do know there's some cons. But you were talking about a smoking sesh, smoking consumption. And honestly, yes. There needs to be some rules around this. A lot of sessions, consumption like lounges, they're trying to make it where it's not BYOC. So it's like, you got to buy it here plus tax. But the sessions, it's a lot of times BYOC, but now I think it's BYOA. Bring your own accessory, because no, you can't hit my blunt. This is the things that are happening. I went to a session and I literally, my heart was in my cooch. It was like, oh my God, are y'all really passing blunts with people you don't know? With the mask, doing the mask thing, because you go into a session, you gotta, have all your mask on and stuff, and they kind of take your temperature. But then everyone is like trying to smoke a blunt joint, whatever, pulling up their mask. I'm like,
how does this make any sense? You're like, how, Sway? No, I agree with you. That's I would have been like, okay, no. But that's why, I always got my pipe anyway. It's always like, just I got my one little thing. Sorry, just enough for me. Boo. That's it.
True.
Less likely to ask you, can they put their lips on your pipe? Now, I have had some folks be that, like, oh, can I get a hit of that? And I think that's the culture that remains, right? It's the history of our camaraderie when you're having this moment with cannabis. But since it's been medicine for me, the entire time I've been in the industry, I have my own rules, as you know, and it definitely doesn't involve sharing anything. I'll share my cannabis, and you could sprinkle a little into whatever accessories you have. So you're right. It might be bring your own accessories as more the move of the sesh, as opposed to, because I'm more likely to give you a nug than I am a pull from my pipe.
Right. And believe it or not, in these sessions, we have to change the culture, just understanding that people are allowing people to buy the smell jar, buy the open container. So the thing, they're like, oh, smell it. It's so good. great, whatever. But it's like especially in the unregulated market, because most unregulated markets are probably super spreaders, believe it or not. And with that, you're selling, you have this whole thing, and you want to hand me the package off the table that I just sniffed and whoever else came to the table and sniffed? No, you're bugging. I'm already paying way too much for these prices, but now you're giving me like the tester? Hell no.
Well, that's a part of the problem. You said the tester, and I think we've got to bring in some of the normalcy of a true consumer experience. Yeah, cannabis should have a tester, and that gets that is not part of the assortment as far as I'm concerned. It gets damaged out. That is common practice in all retailers. So I think when we think about our sessions, particularly if you're talking about in the legacy market, we do need to start implementing some of these things. Also, when you're taking dabs, very few places, remember we were at High Times, people lining up, not one person is putting on their own little mouthpiece, right? There's just like a little bit of some of this alcohol wipe or what have you. Those type of things may have to go a different place. I would say if I'm a brand, I would recommend investing in more dab rigs, right? So that you can have more options as opposed to just the one, and then you're like, oh, we're going to wipe off the mouth. So I think from a business standpoint, it is an opportunity for brands to start to stand out on like what their COVID experience is going to be, especially if you want people to start to come back into the dispensary, come into maybe a sesh or like a cannabis cup type of experience, and you want people to be at your booth. Well, guess what? Your booth needs to be COVID sensitive or COVID friendly, and that means putting that money towards that, as opposed to assuming that everybody's going to come prepared. But yes, you hit the nail on the head as far as the consumer is concerned. People got to start using your common sense. If you lifting your mask to take a hit, then you shouldn't be passing it.
Or I'm about to throw some real shade, because the last session I went to, girl, they did have a dab rig. It had the nerve to be having alcohols, and people paid to take that. I was like, you stupid. You could buy your own rig and melt your own cannabis with a flat iron for this kind of experience, because all y'all are doing are wiping off the mouthpiece. No, they didn't have mouthpiece for sales, which, if you go to any smoke shop, you could at least find one or two. Right. They did not, I feel like their alcohol wipes was probably made out of water, because they're very hard to find right now anyway. So good luck with that. And they're charging people to take a dab of that one rig. And I saw at least 4 people take a dab. I literally was like, well, let me get my weed and get the fuck out of here, because I am there are ways to protect yourself, though.
Absolutely. I think the culture is changing. It's, we are definitely, that's just across the whole world, right? It isn't just cannabis. And I do think if we're going to not continue to be the, the dark child of of USA, we've got to make sure that we're not perpetuating some of the same, I think behaviors that people say are like irresponsible as it pertains to COVID. We can do better. And the truth of the matter is, it's probably what we should have been doing from the beginning anyway, because that is the safest way. Because it's not just COVID that you risk getting. You could get freaking herpes when you don't have a proper thing that's being sanitized. Let's be real. Anything on the mouth, don't get me started.
I know you will break down all the germ. Like, I'm already a little bit of a germaphobe, but you will break it all the way down for us. But it's real. You can actually, you get mono from that. Yes. There's a lot of things you could get from using a random rig that barely is, to what extent is even wiped off. But what are some ways to, protect yourself? Obviously, don't hit the rig. Cool. Or buy your own mouthpiece that you bring with you when you're at a session. It's like, oh yeah, I'll take it. Pop that sucker right on in.
That's a business idea right there, because I could totally see you with a bedazzled mouthpiece, child, and basically clearly everybody know that it's your mouthpiece. And so if you're an cannabis accessories business, that's an opportunity. Another opportunity is really many more personal rigs. I mean, I know I'm dropping gems, but like the fact of the matter is that's where we are moving towards. So even though we may want to share the experience, let's think of it like when we all have on headphones, but we all listen to the same music, but nobody hearing nothing. That's the type of, outside of the headphones, that's the type of thing that we're talking about here. Innovating and finding ways for it to still be fun, for it to still be that we're having a shared experience, but it is a healthier one for us all, period.
Right. And I know people are like, well, that's a pendant. And pendants are a little bit different. They also feel a little bit more like, I don't want to say crack, but if you grew up in the hood, your mama like, what you hitting that out of? That look crazy kind of question. So pendants are also an option for now. David put me on the pendants. Hand sanitizer. I mean, I have hand sanitizer spray. I have the jelly one. I have the liquid one. I have the one that clips to my purse, but I have the one that sits in my car. Hand sanitizer is going to be your best friend. If you're doing anything, whether it's the dispensary or a actual cannabis unregulated sesh, dude, have a hand sink and soap available for people to wash their hands. That should be an option. Am I saying you should force them? No, but I'm saying that let them be an option, because sometimes hand sanitizer ain't enough if you just touch the door, you just touch the rail, and you coming in and you touching the glass and your ID to put it in. So have a hand sink and soap available. Always distance yourself. I say it's always 6 feet minimum. So, sometimes I'd be like 9 feet and you think you're going to get it in front of me and you're not, because I'm actually in line. I'm just super social distancing. And the hardest rule of it, all is the smelling process, because the nose knows, but unfortunately the nose don't need to know. Even though you're smelling it with your mask on, people have cotton masks. They don't have, N95 mask or whatever. So they don't have the mask where particles are not going out. So yeah, try not to smell. And if you're going to smell, you need to hold it by your chest. It needs to be the furthest away from your nose. And if your cannabis isn't strong enough that you just open the jar and get a whiff without putting your nose to it, you probably shouldn't be selling it anyway.
You're right. I mean, I definitely think, I was just about to say, the best chirps and that are on cannabis strains that I love, I literally can hold it here, or you can open it up and put it down there and I still would smell it very quickly. So I think it's also interesting sometimes to even have these experiences in dispensaries where you're smelling something and you don't really smell something. It's like, and then the bartender is like, well, it's been in there for a while. That's been tested for a while. But it's like, really? It really just doesn't have no smell. Meanwhile, we got people getting pulled over because of a smell on the legacy market. So it confuses me so much. But I think you dropped a lot of really, really great tips. And, I'm going to just put a plug in for what I say, which is personal use pipes. Whether it's pipe tech, these are one hitters. It doesn't look worth like sharing unless you're trying to fully repack the pipe. I also know that, to your point, there are some new things coming into the market. Really excited because I was just working with I would say a cannabis industry collaborator, and he was showing me some of the things that are about to drop. Honey, when you see them, I'm gonna have to show you them offline. They're too cute, but they also are made of materials that are much easier to clean and stay sterile longer, more like the things that would be in like a surgical room, because all of those, we don't do surgery with glass. We do surgery with things that can really take a lot of heat to it and really get sterilized quickly. I'm giving, but let's be real. All of these things at the end of the day, Ice, are just business opportunities waiting for people to get themselves cross over into the industry. So again, I have to give a plug for my book, that if you haven't gotten this workbook, How to Succeed in the Cannabis Industry, I think you are missing out, because the industry is continuing to evolve and change. And now that gives even more opportunities for people to cross over, see a problem that exists and look for those solutions. That's a business plan to start, right? Just if you got a problem and you got the solution, you got a business idea.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for joining us. We gave y'all a lot more extras since y'all came back with us after us taking a little hiatus last week. Believe it or not, shit's been crazy. But I am so excited for the information. We gave you real facts, real business, real politics, and some culture too. So thank you for joining us. Thank you, Dasheeda, for always dropping the jewels. Tell the people where they can find you.
Where they always can find me at theweedhead.com. That's where I am, the Weedhead and Company. You can also find me on Instagram and Twitter at Dasheeda Dawson. And I haven't been on Twitter lately, so I'm about to be dropping a little bit. It's been real, I've been real pensive. It's all here, but I haven't put it, but I do need to tweet some of this stuff. And then, of course, on Facebook, where you are watching us live right now, you're going to get Dasheeda Dawson, the Weedhead, and you'll be able to find me.
Yes, ma'am. And make sure you follow She Blaze on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, WeTube. We are on all listening platforms, and also always go to theweedhead.com to hear the latest.
Yay. Well, we had another great week, girl. I thank you so much for always finding the real tea. I hope you have a fantastic week, a productive week, and I'll see you next week.
Wait, not yet. Next week is a special episode called Get Your Civic Life. We brought it on a few conferences that are digital, but now we're bringing it live to you guys on Facebook. So much great information. So tune in. The Dawson sisters will be online to give y'all all the facts on how to be an activist, an advocate, government structure, running for office, everything, baby. So check in with us next week with our special episode, and we're going to go a little bit longer because the information is so good.
Okay. I can't wait.
All right. Bye.
Bye, sis.